Pierre. And as this comes on, I know a couple of things always happens first is that my iHeart and iTunes radio broadcast always goes on first before social media. So I want to welcome everyone to You Be the Judge. It's a show that I am so excited about. I'm always excited about all my shows because of the information, the understanding, the action that we can offer you. And remember this, people, you're not alone. And one of the things that you must understand when you're not alone is that you can ask questions. Especially, this is why I do this many shows I do and the different types of shows, is so you can feel like you have a voice out there for you. And I want to introduce Marylin Pierre, Esquire. Please introduce yourself, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dyer, for allowing me to be in your show. I really appreciate it. My name is Marylin Pierre, and I am a lawyer. I've been practicing law over 28 years. I'm licensed to practice law in the state of Maryland, the District of Columbia, the state of New York, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I'm also licensed to practice law in several federal jurisdictions and even the Supreme Court. So I hope one day I get to do a case in there.
Well, let's bring a good case for you, and hopefully it's a case that changes the lives of so many. Like Thurgood Marshall, I know one of your deepest admirations, and the man that's behind you there is Thurgood, and he did so much for us, and I know you are doing so much for us too. And again, great for New York because being a New Yorker, I will always be a New Yorker.
Yeah,
And
me too.
and I know there's a lot of brothers out there who're gonna need your help.
Yeah, like they said, if you could make it in New York, you could make it anywhere.
That's right. So you be the judge. Here's what the topic is. It's about if you have a legal question, ask us specifically because we're going to do the best we can to give you general information. Now, Marilyn, as we were talking off air, there are many things people misunderstand about court and court cases. What are some of the things that you notice that people just get missed?
I think people miss things, especially because of the fear factor. It is very intimidating when you have to deal with the court system, extremely intimidating. As a matter of fact, even the robe that the judges wear is a form of intimidation and it's a form of anonymity that they're supposed to have. And so, since you're not supposed to see the person as an individual, you're only supposed to see them as an authority figure, that makes it even more intimidating. But in spite of it being so intimidating, you really, really need to prepare. And what I mean by that is you really need to make sure that you know as much as possible about what is going on in your case. Because if you miss a court date, it is really, really hard to get it's really, really hard not to get really severe repercussions from that.
Now,
So the first thing is to make sure that you know exactly when your court date are and when your deadlines are.
so one of the things I know when it comes to court date, they always have a phone number that you call, and you call the clerk of court. Is that correct?
Yes. Mhm.
And when you don't get through, isn't that frustrating for the common person to not able to get through because they try and then they don't get through, and then all of a sudden something happens and they miss their court date? If they miss it, what should they do then?
Well, let's go back just a little bit because
Okay.
what I would really, really stress is to try to get a lawyer as soon as you can. And there are lots of I would say lots, but they don't, but there's some free legal services that you could get. You could get the Office of the Public Defender if it's a criminal case. You could get the Legal Aid Bureau if it's a consumer law case or even a family law case. And there are other free or reduced fee legal services that people could get as well as, hey, I think there was an article that I read a couple of years ago where this lawyer was charging $10,000 an hour. If you could pay a lawyer $10,000 an hour, you're good. You
Yeah,
know, so you don't even need to listen to the rest of the show. Just,
right.
let your
Just keep
fingers
on
do the
moving.
dialing, as they used to say when we were younger, and just go ahead and just pick a lawyer, any lawyer. But anyway, if and even if you have a lawyer, it is really important that you know exactly what is going on in your case. I have to tell you, I ran into a lot of people who are intimidated by their lawyer. Please do not be intimidated by your lawyer. If you're intimidated by your lawyer, you need to get another lawyer. The reason for that is because you have to be extremely comfortable asking this person any question that you need to know the answer to. And sometimes in a criminal case, for instance, I would say to my client, there's certain questions that when I ask you, do not tell me what your version of it is. Tell me what you think the what the potential witnesses version of it is going to be. Because, once I know what your version of it is, I'm stuck with your version. But if I don't know what your version is and I only know the other people's version, then it's easier for me to then establish a defense for you. Yeah. But
That's so
those are the
important.
sorts of conversations that you have to be comfortable to have with your lawyer. I tell my clients that I'm not a priest, and so I am not going to judge you. I just need to know I just need to know what I'm facing, so that way I could advise you as best as I can, and that way we can come up with the best defense that we can. And even in a civil case, some people are embarrassed to say, hey, I was not exactly, 100% correct, in what I was doing. So tell the lawyer that you weren't exactly 100% correct. Lawyers are used to dealing with imperfect people. We
Okay.
have seen, after you've been a lawyer for a certain amount of time, you have seen almost all of it. And, sometimes just when you think you've seen all of it, you see something new. So that's why I say that. But very few lawyers judge. We got into this profession to help people. So helping people is what's really important to us. And doing the best job that we can is what's really important to us as well. So
What?
make sure you have a lawyer that you could really trust. Right? And reference to that as well,
Yeah.
keep in touch with the lawyer. Sometimes people say, oh, my lawyer's handling it. Yeah, well, but the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So you want to be squeaky enough so you could get the oil. You want to know when your due dates are, what is expected of you. And if you don't know why, you need to ask why that is expected of you, and your deadline in terms of when things are due. When is your answer due? If you have interrogatories, which is questions from the other party, when is the answer to that due? Because you don't want to have to face motions to compel or motions even for sanctions because you missed those deadlines.
How easy is for a judge to send out a bench warrant for something? Is it just on the judge's whim, or is it because he's taking things into account?
Mhm.
Because a lot of warrants are pushed out for people, and then when I hear them or hear them from friends, family, whoever, they're like, "I have a bench warrant." I'm like, "Well, like what? How come?" And it could be just as simple as missing a court date.
It is as simple as that. It is as simple as that. And so that's why it's really, really important that if for whatever reason you cannot get to that courthouse, you call somebody and say, I cannot get to that courthouse. One of the things that I see the better judges do is they wait until what they will call a case. And if the defendant is not there, they will then wait until the end of their docket and
Okay.
recall the case. And if the defendant is not there, then they issue a bench warrant. Because what happens is that if you call a case at 9 o'clock and the defendant gets there at 9:15, and by 9 o'clock, when the judge first calls the case, the judge issues a bench warrant. Some judges will not remove that bench warrant, even if the defendant shows up at 9:15 and say, "Here I
Wow.
am." Yeah, they still issue the bench warrant. And to get rid of a bench warrant, oh my goodness, it's a whole lot of work and attorney and more attorneys fees and
How,
and more
how,
things on the record.
well, how would you know? How would you know if a bench warrant's been issued if you showed up at 9:15 or 9:30 and not at 9 o'clock? Would you know
Oh,
automatically, or would they tell you as you sign?
they will tell you. The judge will say to you,
Okay.
I already issued a bench warrant in your case. And so now you have to go through the process of removing the bench warrant. And also the underlying case is still there. So now instead of you having one thing to do, you actually have two things to deal with.
So is that the way the court can stockpile things onto someone if they're trying to bury them? Is that like,
Yes, exactly. And like I said, because things happen, you could leave at 7:30 in the morning to get to court at 9 o'clock, giving yourself plenty of time. And things happen, and you still might manage not to make it to court at all. And what I say is, if you could call the court as soon as you possibly can, let's say your Uber driver got into an accident or something like that, or you fell asleep on the bus because you didn't get the sleep the night before because you were worried, and so you were tired, you fell asleep. When you wake up, you're at a bus depot or something like that. I don't know, but life
right?
happens.
It could be,
So
life happens.
and it has happened in situations. So what you do is you call the court as soon, well, I'm sorry, if you have a lawyer, you call your lawyer as soon as possible. And nowadays it's a little bit easier in terms of, cell phones and text messages and emails. And then the lawyer could say, oh, my client was on his way. He is at a bus depot. So please, can we just reschedule? And in that situation, most likely the court is going to reschedule. If you don't have a lawyer, at least call the courthouse. Even if you could just tell the clerk that my case is such and such, could you please look it up for me and tell me what judge is in front of? Can you please call the judge's courtroom if the judge is in the courtroom, and leave a message with the clerk or somebody to let the judge know that I'm on my way. I'm trying to do my best to get there.
We're going to be having you be the judge, and I'm lucky to have Marylin Pierre, Esquire, the attorney at law, and myself to host this show to give you information about court, criminal, and legislation, because everything is done through legal matters. When laws are made, it's done through the courts, and that's how laws are made. So if things are affecting you in your community, in your township, in your county, it's done through the courts when they pass those bills. Now, let's talk about bills, because there's a lot of things that are moving through the courts that the common person doesn't know. Now, a bill is made through the court. Can we influence that bill if it's going to be up there? How do we do that?
Oh, yes. And nowadays as well, because of the internet, it's so much easier, because you could actually track a bill from the time that it's introduced. And sometimes, even if you know about it ahead of time, if you could propose bills to your legislature, you could say to your legislature, whether it's your state representative or your federal representative, you could say, hey, I have this wonderful idea for a bill, which I actually did. And I actually had a bill that was passed based on an idea that I had because I was trying to help a client. Well, actually, well, a friend, yeah. And so, and what happens is you have this idea asking your legislature, why is it that this doesn't happen, or what can we do about this issue that I find important? And what your legislature will do is talk to the legislative aides that they have and see what bills could be drafted to address the issue that you have. And then they will give the bill a number, and you could track the bill under, like for instance, in the state of Maryland, you could track the bill under Maryland legislative's website. Well, and you could see when it leaves the committee, you could see when it is presented to the House, And all of this is, I'm sorry, and then when it's presented to the Senate, all of this is public information. You could not only have the information, but you could actually be present when the legislature is, when your legislature is voting on it.
These are all these things that I don't think a lot of people knew or have ever heard before, that you're able to have an effect on your living and in your area. And these are the things that I'm glad we're able to talk about. Like, there are bills that are being presented. Now, is there a way to check on bills being presented, even if it's just like so they can check to see what's coming up on the docket? Is there like there's an open forum for that too?
Oh, yes, there is. Like I said, everything is public information. For instance, this evening, I was in a very interesting meeting about the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. And the people who were heading the meeting were very involved in that bill and what it is that they have to do to make it more, well, make it more to their liking. And one of the things that they talked about is why it was set up, how it's set up, and how, and the best way to, like I said, make it to their liking, because they're concerned about some of the things that is happening in their community because of the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. So looking at that, they said, okay, what can we do? And they're working together. You have different professionals, you have people in the activist community, you have lawyers, you have people in the people who are elected officials, even some police officers who are working together trying to figure out what is the best way to draft a bill to get to something that they all would prefer to have than what is there now.
So when and with all the climate that has happened these last years of police officers and civilians, what is I mean, we're not going to get into it tonight, but I think we need to talk about how can someone be able to understand what they need to do to get pulled over safely and maybe make it home, because it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, well, we really hope they make it home because, and we hope everybody makes it home. We hope the police officer makes it home, and we hope that the person who gets pulled over makes it home. And what well, I was going to say, make sure that you don't have a broken tail light, but I understand
Right.
life circumstances. Sometimes it's between, hey, you eat and pay your rent, or you fix the broken tail
The
light.
broken tail light.
Yeah. So, but hopefully, that seems to be a very prominent reason for pulling people over. That's like, ugh. But anyway,
Well, doesn't
so
that go into probability and having a cop have what you call and I don't know, like, obviously it's what's the term when they have just the right to pull you over to check it, to
oh, you
check
mean
you
an
out?
investigative stop?
Yes.
But they have to have what's called an articulable suspicion. They just can't stop you because they can't. The United States Supreme Court said that they just can't stop you just because you look suspicious. They actually have to have a reason that they could then say, well, this person looks suspicious because, so they have to be able to articulate it. They don't have to articulate it at the time they stop you. But at a certain point in there, they should be able to say, well, I stopped this person because. So it can't be because, well, I had a feeling.
Well, isn't that the problem, is that when they get asked the question hours later, when they do their reports, they can get a good reason. And that's where it gets easy, isn't it? Because when we ask them as a person, say, well, why did you pull me over? It becomes combative just because we asked the question. And aren't we allowed to be asked the question?
I would say, since everybody wants to go home, unfortunately, we have to talk about the talk, which means that we have to talk about putting your hands on the wheel. When I get pulled over, the first thing that I do is open up my glove compartment, get my registration out, open up my purse, get my driver's license out, because I know they're going to ask for those things. So by the time the police officer does the check that the police officer is doing, and sometimes it just seems to take forever, but what they're checking is they're checking the license plate, they're
Right.
making sure that it's not a stolen car. Yeah, and so by the time they get to my car, I have my license and my registration and my insurance in my hand, if need be. And
See now,
so they
see
ask
now,
for it, I
Ma-
hand it to
well,
them.
Marilyn, hold on, Marilyn.
Mhm.
I remember teaching my son, and it was the most emotional event. And he's 21 now. When he got his license, when he was getting his permit at 15, we did 3 hours of a mock pullover in the living room with 4 chairs. And
Wow.
I would never forget this. And this is before Castile got killed in Minnesota. And I knew Castile
Oh,
personally.
I'm sorry.
And
Like,
and
wow, sorry for your loss.
and the thing is, he said, and this is before he got shot. And then I told my son, I said, you have to keep your hands on the wheel, wait till they get to the car before, I don't want you to reach over so it looks like you're going to grab something. And he said, well, shouldn't I get it ready? I said, no. I said, no. Now, you will actually open your glove compartment. So do you think that's like is that like a male female thing, you think? Or because I don't know, I'm very adamant not moving until he can see me move. I don't know.
Well, I like to have everything in my hand by the time they come over. And the reason for that is my suspicion as a lawyer.
Okay.
Because, sometimes you have things in your car that were left there by somebody who you gave a ride to or something.
Right.
So when you open the glove compartment and something falls out, then it becomes in clear view of that police officer. So therefore, that police officer then has another reason for bringing you in. So even if they didn't have a reason,
Now they do.
for bringing you in to begin with, even if they were just going to let you go with a warning or telling you that, hey, there's a roadblock over there, I just wanted to make sure that you knew, since you seem to be going down that road. You know what I mean? Because
I do.
I don't want to, I guess, make it seem like police officers are bad people, because I myself am a former military police officer, so I always try to balance it out. I understand there are lots and lots and lots of bad situations that happen with police officers that definitely should not happen. But I always tell my children, because I have 3 children, a 25-year-old son now, a 21-year-old son, and a 17-year-old daughter. And I always tell them to judge the police officers by the way they treat you, and not think that just because someone is a police officer, someone is bad or they're going to do something bad to you. Which is why I like to make sure that everything is in my hands. So that way I'm not reaching into any glove compartment or anything else. By the time the police officer comes to my car, they have that, they sort of like have one hand on their weapon, and I have both of my hands on the wheel. So they know that there's nothing in my hand except, paper and my driver's license. So they just ask for it. They see my hand, and I give it to them. I hand it to them, and like I said, that way I'm not shuffling through stuff, and who knows what's going to fall out. like I said, it might be my suspicion as a lawyer, but that's what I do, and I prefer not to do that. And also, I think as well, maybe it might be a gender thing, because I'm probably not as threatening to police officers as my 25 and my 21-year-old sons, even though, I probably would cause them more trouble than my 25 and my 21-year-old sons.
So I know again, we're not going to do much time today because we want to let people know that You Be the Judge is a show that we're going to have with Marylin, Pierre, attorney at law, and myself, Dr. Paul Dyer. We want to be here to just get you familiar and understanding, because again, information and understanding. I think a lot of people get information and they don't understand. And that's where things get missed. And that's where I think people get killed. And that's where people get locked up. And that's where things go so wrong. And tonight you said, stay on top of, if you have a court case, stay on top of calling them and letting them know when you're supposed to show up. That I'm writing it down, and I'm going to be taking notes because I'm learning from you.
And also, I'm sorry to interrupt. And also nowadays, like I said, because of the internet, you could get so much information from the internet. You could go to case search, and what different states have case search. In Maryland, you could go to Maryland Judiciary Case Search. Just put that into your search browser, and it will come up with the case search website. You go on that website, you put in your last name and all the case. Well, I'm sorry, you put in your name and all the cases that you have, whether they're open or closed, ever since I forgot what year they go back to, would pop right on there. So you could look at your case and find out when your court date is. You could find out whether an order was signed or whether it has, or a motion was filed. You could find out all kinds of information. And if you have any questions, you have the case number right there. You could even say, you could call the courthouse and say, okay, what is this that's listed at docket entry 10? Because this is new. It says that I should have gotten it 2 weeks ago. I never received any such thing. Could you tell me, why I didn't get it?
Well, I'm going to be your first year law student. We're just going into the law school of Marylin, Pierre's law school, and I like I said, information is going to keep us safe. Information and understanding is going to keep us alive. And we have to be able to do both of those things. And we need to figure out how to navigate the court system. Before we get off the air, the Affordable Care Act was put out there, and I was totally surprised by what Kavanaugh said. Was there any surprises that you felt that surprised you about what the justices have said about the Affordable Care Act?
I was not surprised by what Kavanaugh say, and also Roberts also gave some indication that he did not think that since there is no penalty for the mandatory mandate, it does not mean that the whole bill should be held unconstitutional. I have sort of like it's difficult for me to discuss the Affordable Care Act in the sense that, we are the richest country in the whole world.
Yeah.
And we have people who don't have health insurance. And the people who are telling us that we cannot give people who can't afford health insurance, we are paying for their health insurance. So basically, we're paying for their health insurance so that they could tell us not to pay for other people's health insurance. And I could never understand it, especially in the age of COVID, where we're basically in the same ship. And so if one of us gets sick, all of us get sick. So it's beneficial to all of us to have people have health insurance, so that way they could take care of themselves as soon as possible, and they spread COVID or whatever else that's out there as little as possible. And if everybody is healthy, then everybody is healthy, as opposed to if one person is unhealthy and they spread it to the healthy population, then so many of us become unhealthy when we didn't have to. So that's my little spiel on the Affordable Care Act. So to me, it's a no-brainer, but to some people, it just seems like it's a visceral reaction that, not everybody deserves health insurance. Not everybody, worked hard for it. Not everybody. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, I don't know why the answer is always like, well, they're going to abuse it if we give it to them. I mean, there are hypochondriacs, but outside of hypochondriacs, very few people go to the doctor and use those medical services unless they need them.
Well,
Like,
I agree.
like I said, it's just
I
mind-boggling.
well, we think it's mind-boggling too, but when it gets to the courts, I think that's when people go, well, how did it get there? And I think that's what, for us non-legal minds, like, so you could just throw anything at the Supreme Court and just hope it sticks. But no, they had a precedent to be able to bring it there. And what was that precedence for them to able to bring it there?
Well, in the case that you're talking about, California versus Texas,
Yes.
is the Supreme Court case that was heard 2 days ago. Yeah.
Yes.
In reference to the Affordable Care Act. First of all, the Affordable Care Act is monumental in terms of the number of people that it covered. I believe it covered 24 million. It has covered 24 million people who were not covered prior to 2016. So in 4 years, it's covered about that many, if not more. And so it's a really great bill. The insurance companies were protected in the sense that there was a mandatory mandate that says that if you did not have health insurance, you were supposed to pay a penalty. The Supreme Court ruled that the penalty, because it was not a tax, let me see if I remember it correctly, because the penalty was not a tax, it was not something that could be upheld.
Right.
So after that was done, Congress passed a law saying that, okay, we will put, it's not a tax, and so we will put it at zero. And then President Trump then passed, what is it? The Jobs Act, yeah, the tax reduced bill and Jobs Act or something like that. And so now there is no mandatory mandate. Certain Republican officials felt that it was, since there was no mandatory mandate, then that means that the whole act should fall. Now, we as lawyers know that just because one part of a contract is not valid doesn't mean that the whole contract is invalid. As a matter of fact, I don't know anybody who, any lawyer who has written a prenuptial or postnuptial or separation agreement where that language is not in it, or a last will and testament, or any sort of contract where that language is not in there. The language is basically saying just because this part is found to be invalid doesn't make the whole agreement invalid. So the part about, hey, just because the mandatory mandate is found to be invalid, it does not make the whole Affordable Care Act invalid. So yeah, it's a good argument in terms of contract law, because that's basic contract law. And I think that Justice Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh recognized, well, as well as Kagan Sotomayor and oh my goodness, who's the other one? Kagan Sotomayor. What am I forgetting?
Oh, there's three.
Oh, there were 3 women. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. So Kagan Sotomayor, Justice. No, we're missing.
We're missing one.
I'm missing one. Sorry, I can't think of the one that I'm missing right now. But just because of that doesn't mean that the whole act should fall. Yeah, and basic contract law. You find one part invalid, you take that part out, and then the rest remains valid. It's the same thing as surgery. Basically, if you have your tonsils that needs to be removed, you remove your tonsils and the rest of your body is fine. So they don't kill you just because they're removing your tonsils, basically.
Because it was Kagan Sotomayor and no, not.
Yeah, why can't I remember the other one? Because I keep thinking of Ginsburg, of course.
No, but it was Roberts and Kavanaugh who also agreed.
But that makes 4, and they need 5.
It was 5, right? And
yeah. So I'm missing somebody, and I keep thinking that because there used to be 4. Okay, so
it's not Gorsuch, right? No.
Yeah, well, because it used to be 4. The decisions used to be 4 to 5. So 2, 4, 6.
Was it
7.
Kennedy?
Oh, this one has Okay. Yeah, and I think is it Dyer who used to make the fourth one?
Buyer,
Yeah,
Briar,
so
Briar.
yeah, so it's okay, yeah, Stephen Dyer, that's who I was forgetting. Yeah, so right now what they're thinking is that Amy Coney Barrett is going to be well, is probably going to rule the same way that Clarence Thomas and the other conservative justices are ruling. And I go back again to how important the courts are and
Yeah.
how it is so important that we know who gets to be judges and justices in our court system. Because if we could tell from the beginning how most likely these judges and justices are going to rule, then to me that's problematic
That
in
is
the sense
problematic right
that
there. I think that's problematic.
yeah, in the sense that you don't hear the case before you have before your mind is made up in a certain sense, and that's problematic because because sometimes someone comes into my office and they talk about something and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's just too bad. And then I then ask them to tell it to me from the other person's point of view, and it's kind of interesting how how then you know
Well,
it's a different story.
I just want to let people know you be the judge. We're here with Marylin, Pierre, and Dr. Paul. We're going to be doing this periodically. If it's not every week, it's going to be every other week. But we'll keep you up to date on when it's next time we have the show. And remember, this is about understanding information. We'll talk about civil cases, criminal cases, and some general cases, and we got to figure out what all that means in the catch-all. And then if you have any questions, just put it in the inbox, and we'll save it up for the next time we come on air. Thank you, Marylin, so much for spending the time with us here on Bridges Live with You Be the Judge. I love that little thing. We'll have this nice little judge course here, right here. You be the judge, and we talk about some legal stuff with this beautiful legal mind. And I thank you so much for your talent and your blessings. Thank you.
What, Dr. Dyer, it is my pleasure. Thank you very much for what you do for the community. It's a beautiful thing that you're doing. I love educating people because I mean, definitely knowledge is power. The more we know about how the world around us works, the more powerful we become, and the more we're able to work to get towards our goals. So I look forward to doing this, and I hope that we help as many people as we can.
I believe we already have. I believe we already do, and that's where our prayer is. So let's bow our heads, please. Our prayers out. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for Marylin for being on the show, and thank you for having our voices be heard for those who need it. And let those people know they are not alone. Let them not be afraid, for we have power and education information on our side. And in Jesus Christ we pray, amen. Thank you so much, Marylin.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Dyer. It is such a pleasure. Thank you.